You know why you don't talk, right? Savannah smirked in front of 50 students, phone cameras ready. Because you're scared. The hallway went dead silent, and I stepped forward. Just one step, just one sentence. I'll be there. Her face cracked. She wanted fear. I gave her fire. What she didn't know was that she just started a war. Have you ever been judged, abused by authority, discriminated against, or had your dignity and self-worth completely stripped away? Let me tell you my story. A story that somewhere in this world still happens far too often. Leave a comment with the number 9 so I know you're with me and ready to hear what I have to share. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you won't miss any of the intense moments ahead. If you are deaf or have trouble hearing, please turn on the subtitles. We created them especially for you because you matter. This is Radio from Hine, the #1 YouTube channel for justice and equality for everyone, standing strong against racism and discrimination. Wishing you a peaceful day. The first thing I felt was the silence. Not the kind you get in a library, the kind that swells when you walk into a room and every eye shifts just slightly, enough to let you know you don't belong. That was Silverwood Prep. First day, first breath, first battle. My name's Imani Carter. I was the new black girl in a sea of polished white uniforms, straight blonde ponytails, and thick southern accents dipped in fake sugar. And from the moment I stepped onto that marble floor, it was like the entire building decided to inhale and hold it. I walked slow, purposefully, like my backpack weighed more than it did. My hands clenched the straps hard enough to leave indentations in my palms. I kept my head down, not because I was scared, but because I knew how this worked. I've been the new girl before. I've been the other. The one with skin that stood out. The one who didn't laugh at their jokes because they weren't funny, just cruel. Silverwood Prep was no different. The walls were too clean. The students too polished. The stairs too sharp. Their whispers weren't loud, but they weren't quiet enough to miss. Is she on scholarship? She's probably from downtown. Must be lost. They said it like I wasn't even there. Like I was invisible and visible at the same time. A glitch in their perfect system. I kept moving, past the portraits of alumni who looked like politicians, oil tycoons, and plantation owners, past the trophies in the glass case, past the eyes of teachers who smiled with their mouths, but not their eyes. I kept telling myself, just blend, stay low, survive. But then I saw her, Savannah Whitmore. If Silverwood Prep had royalty, she was it. Platinum blonde, 6 feet of privilege wrapped in a plaid skirt, heels clicking like a metronome that kept the entire school in rhythm. People didn't just look at her, they reacted. A hallway full of teenagers parted like the Red Sea when she walked through. And when her eyes landed on me, everything stopped. It wasn't just a glance, it was an assessment, like she was scanning me, breaking me down, calculating exactly how much of a threat I was. Her expression didn't change, not even a blink, but I felt it. That chill. That unspoken message that people like her sent to people like me. I'm in control here. You? You're just passing through. I looked away first, not out of weakness, but because I knew better than to challenge a queen on her turf. Not when you're still trying to figure out your locker combination. The bell rang, a sharp, angry sound that seemed to echo off my spine. I turned the corner and tried to find locker 341B. Students bumped past me without saying a word, brushing my shoulder like I wasn't real. One girl looked straight through me. Another gave me a half smile like she felt sorry for me, then disappeared back into the crowd. I finally found my locker near the end of the hall, right under a flickering light that buzzed like it was annoyed with my presence. As I twisted the lock, I could feel her before I saw her. Savannah. Standing just a few feet away, surrounded by 2 other girls I hadn't even noticed before. Haley, tall and redheaded, with lips curled in a permanent smirk, and Sloane, shorter, quieter, eyes always scanning, observing. None of them said anything. They didn't have to. Their presence alone was a statement, a warning. I kept my back to them, focused on the numbers, 317. Click, locker opened. I dropped my bag inside, but my chest, tight, like I'd been holding my breath since I got off the bus. They stayed there a moment longer, just long enough to let me know they'd seen me, noticed me, tagged me. Then they turned and walked away. That was my welcome, and no one said a damn word. I leaned against the locker, trying to breathe through the static buzzing in my skull. I wasn't scared, not exactly, but I was aware of what this place was, of who ran it, of where I stood on their silent social food chain. I didn't need to be told I was at the bottom. I already knew. That's the thing about being black in a white school. They don't have to insult you out loud. The structure does it for them. The spacing in the halls, the smirks, the teachers who look through you, the lunch tables already filled before you arrive, the absence of welcome. I closed my locker, gripped the strap of my bag, and started walking to my first class. I hadn't spoken a single word to anyone yet, but the war, it had already started. And the look Savannah gave me, it wasn't curiosity, it was a promise. Some people rule with words, others use fists. Savannah Whitmore, she didn't need either. At Silverwood Prep, she was the air, unseen but everywhere. Every laugh, every hallway glance, every awkward silence. Somehow, it all bent toward her like gravity. You could feel it. She didn't have to say anything to remind people who she was. Just walking past someone was enough to make them straighten their back or duck their head. Even the faculty seemed to orbit her like she was more than just a student, more like the unofficial face of the institution. Her last name was stitched into the donor plaques outside the library. Her father was some big real estate magnate. Her mother ran charity galas with politicians. The kind of family that didn't just have money, they had legacy. And legacy around here, that was law. That morning, I sat in the far right corner of homeroom near the window, where the sun barely touched. The teacher was calling names, checking off attendance. I kept my head low, pretending to scribble something in my notebook. But I didn't miss the change in the air. Whispers behind me, a chair screeching back too loud, and then the click of heels. Not stilettos, just expensive ones, deliberate. Savannah entered like she owned the floor. She didn't look around. She didn't have to. Her two shadows followed closely, Haley, with her wildfire hair and predatory smile, and Sloane, the quieter one, with eyes like a hawk. They flanked her like trained security, but prettier. Not once did either of them smile without permission. They took their usual seats in the center of the room, of course. Prime real estate. From there, Savannah could see everyone. More importantly, everyone could see her. Even me. She didn't look directly at me, but I felt her glance sweep my way. The side eyes from Haley and Sloane confirmed it. I turned the page in my notebook, made a note that wasn't real, kept my head down. Guess the transfer program's getting generous this year, Haley said, not bothering to whisper. The comment hung in the air, sour and sharp. A few students shifted in their seats but said nothing. Sloane giggled softly. Wonder if she even knows what a blazer is, or if that's just regular clothes. I still didn't look up. Didn't have to. I've lived through this before. Different names, different faces, same game. The unspoken strategy: isolate, humiliate, dominate. But they didn't know me. Not yet. I kept breathing slow, calm, focused on the words in front of me that weren't even there, pretending not to hear what they were so desperately hoping I'd react to, because that's how they won, when you flinch. But the thing about silence, it only makes people like Savannah more curious, more agitated. They don't understand how to break something that doesn't respond. The bell rang, relief in the form of noise. Everyone stood. Savannah brushed past me, close enough for the scent of her designer perfume to hit. Sweet but sharp, like sugared glass. She didn't touch me, didn't say a word, but her hair flipped just enough to graze my shoulder. Accidental? Of course not. Calculated to the inch. I let it pass. Walking the halls between classes was worse. You learn quickly how Silverwood works. Where you sit matters. Who you walk with matters. Who you're seen laughing with, even more so. And Savannah, she didn't just follow those rules. She wrote them. Boys turned to look when she walked by, even if they were holding hands with someone else. Girls adjusted their makeup when they saw her reflection in a window. Even the seniors stepped aside when she passed. And then there was me, the transfer, the girl from Detroit, the scholarship kid, the black girl. A walking contradiction in a school built on legacy, image, and skin so pale it glowed under fluorescent lights. I kept my head up, eyes forward, but I saw them, the glances, the double takes, the way their smiles changed once they looked closer, like they thought they'd seen a ghost, or worse, a glitch. At lunch, it got clearer. Silverwood's cafeteria was a damn social map. Who you sat with defined your worth. The center tables were reserved unofficially for the elite. Savannah's table, dead center, lit from above by sunlight like a stage. She sat there with Haley, Sloan, and a few boys who looked like they were born in Ralph Lauren ads. One of them leaned over her shoulder, whispering something that made her laugh, just loud enough for the whole room to hear. And when she laughed, others followed, reflexively, like birds startled into flight. I stood near the entrance with my tray, looking for a place to sit that didn't feel like I was trespassing. They saw me, her entire table. Savannah didn't blink, but her lips curved slightly, just slightly, like she knew. Knew that I was alone, knew that I'd stay that way, knew that no matter where I sat, edge, back, corner, I'd still feel them watching. And she wasn't wrong. I walked to the furthest corner of the cafeteria and sat by myself, back to the wall. I wasn't afraid, but I wasn't stupid either. Sometimes it's not about fear. Sometimes it's about timing. Because the thing about queens, they only rule until someone shows up who doesn't care about their crown. And the look Savannah gave me that day, it wasn't just territorial, it was possessive. Like she had already decided I belonged to her game. What she didn't know, I've played this game before. And this time, I came prepared. By the second week, the whispers had teeth. They didn't bark. They hissed. Low, sharp syllables that slid between lockers and under desks, like snakes in the dark. She doesn't talk to anyone. She thinks she's better than us. Or maybe she just doesn't know how to talk. I heard all of it. Not because I was trying to listen, because they wanted me to hear it. That's the trick. They never say it to your face. They just throw it in the air, knowing the smoke will find its way to you. And I let it. I let it float past me, wrap around my skin, and then evaporate. Because I'd learned something long ago. People like Savannah and her girls, they feed off reaction. Give them anger, they'll grow. Give them tears, they'll devour you. But give them nothing, that drives them insane. It started small. I'd walk into a classroom and feel the temperature drop. Haley's eyes would flick toward me like knives she was too polite to throw. Sloan would lean in to whisper something, just loud enough that I'd catch the end of it. Ghetto fabulous. Probably can't even spell her own name. Always followed by a giggle, sharp, synthetic. I sat near the window, same seat every time. I didn't engage, didn't ask questions, didn't volunteer answers. I wasn't trying to be mysterious. I just didn't want to waste words on people who didn't see me as human. I figured that would be enough. It wasn't. In bio class, Savannah walked in late, on purpose like always, and took the empty seat next to mine. The entire classroom shifted when she sat. Shoulders tensed. Pens stopped moving. It wasn't fear, it was expectation. Like everyone knew something was about to happen. She didn't say hello. She didn't even look at me. Instead, she leaned back in her seat, stretched her legs out long, and stared ahead like I wasn't there. But I could feel her breath, measured, slow, and the way her shoulder barely touched mine, like an intentional accident. The teacher was writing on the board, something about mitochondria. I was pretending to care. That's when she whispered, just loud enough, "You don't talk much, huh?" I didn't answer. Let me guess. Too shy? Or too stuck up? Still nothing. Another pause. Then, "You know, it's cute, how hard you're trying to disappear." I turned my head slightly, just enough for her to see my eyes. I didn't glare, I didn't blink, I just looked. A long, quiet look. And that was enough. Because Savannah flinched. Not physically, just a flicker, a shadow of discomfort behind her perfect lashes. But I saw it. The next day, they upped the game. Someone switched the contents of my locker, textbooks gone, replaced with crumpled paper, gum wrappers, a banana peel. A sticky note taped to the inside door read, "Wrong school." I didn't report it, didn't even clean it up right away. I just stood there, looking at the mess, until I felt the weight of their eyes from across the hall. Then I slowly peeled off the note, folded it once, slid it into my pocket, and walked away. They wanted humiliation. I gave them silence. But here's the thing about silence. It doesn't make you invisible. It makes you a target. And every day I stayed quiet, I could feel it building, like pressure behind my ribs, like a storm tightening inside my lungs. Because they didn't understand what I was doing. They thought I was weak. But what I was doing was waiting. Because I knew myself. I knew what would happen if I snapped. And I couldn't afford that again. Not here. Not after what happened last time. I don't talk about it, not even with my dad, but let's just say I've seen what happens when I stop holding back, and so has someone else. So now, at Silverwood, I kept the lid on tight. I let them whisper. I let them stare. I let them think I was afraid. Because what I wasn't going to do was make the same mistake twice. But even with all that control, all that breathing, all that silence, I could feel the fire rising, slow, relentless. And the more they laughed behind my back, the more I realized something brutal. It wasn't just about me anymore. This was a test, a line in the sand, and they had no idea what would happen if I ever decided to cross it. The cafeteria was the Coliseum. That's what it felt like walking in, like stepping into a ring where people didn't throw punches, they threw glances, laughter, silence, social exile. You didn't need fists to destroy someone at Silverwood Prep. Just a phone, just an audience. And Savannah Whitmore, she had both. I walked in with my tray, same as always, chicken nuggets, some soggy fries, apple juice. I didn't care what I grabbed. I just needed somewhere to sit. Somewhere far enough from the center that I could breathe, but not so far I looked like I was trying to disappear. My eyes scanned the tables. The packed ones were in the middle, of course, Savannah's throne surrounded by her loyal court. Haley twirled her hair, legs crossed like she thought someone was taking pictures. Sloane sat with her eyes half-lidded, bored but calculating. They saw me. I kept walking. There was a table in the far corner, back by the exit doors. The kind of place you only sat if no one else wanted you. That made it perfect. I sat down, head down, fork in hand. I was halfway through my food when the shift happened. You can feel it before you see it. The cafeteria got quieter, conversations dropped into hushed tones, movement slowed. A ripple of awareness spread across the room like a shadow. And then I heard them. Footsteps. 3 sets. Deliberate. Savannah, Haley, Sloane. I didn't look up. Not at first. I heard the click of a tray hitting the table beside me, the soft scrape of designer shoes on the tile, the forced giggle that didn't sound human. "Well, look at this," Savannah said sweetly. Her voice floated across the table like perfume laced with poison. "You like corners, huh?" Another giggle. Haley this time. "Maybe she's allergic to people." "I mean," Sloane added, "if I had that outfit on, I wouldn't want anyone seeing me either." They laughed. Others joined in. Not because it was funny, but because she laughed. And in this place, when Savannah laughed, the room obeyed. I still didn't look at her. I focused on my tray, a piece of nugget, a pool of ketchup. My hand didn't shake. My breath stayed even. But my stomach, tight, like it knew what was coming. Savannah stepped closer. I saw her shadow shift, felt her presence at my side, and then she did it. A sudden, deliberate flick of her wrist, cold, wet. My tray exploded in color. Red juice splattered across the nuggets, fries, my white shirt. It spilled across the table like blood. Sticky, loud, final. Gasps, then laughter. Phones were already up. She gasped too, fake, exaggerated, the kind you'd hear in a bad play. "Oh my God," she said, pressing her hand to her mouth like she was shocked. "I'm so sorry. That was an accident." More laughter, a chorus of cheap amusement. I sat still. I didn't flinch, didn't wipe my shirt, didn't move an inch. I just stared at the mess, at the red soaking into my food, dripping onto the floor, running off the edge of the plastic tray like a crime scene. Savannah was watching me closely now, her smirk wide, triumphant, waiting. She wanted me to snap. She wanted to catch it on video, the angry black girl lashing out. It was her endgame, her final move. I let the silence stretch. The longer it lasted, the more the room leaned in. Then I moved. Slowly, calmly. I picked up the tray, stood, walked across the room, juice still dripping from the edge, and dropped the whole thing into the trash. The thud echoed louder than any of their laughter. I grabbed a napkin, wiped my hands clean with surgical precision, and turned back toward my table. I walked past Savannah without looking at her. But just before I reached my seat again, I paused, turned, met her eyes, and smiled. Not a smirk, not anger, not fake. Just still, calm, controlled, and something in that moment shifted. The air, the room, her. Because that smile, it didn't say you won. It said, you have no idea what you just started. Savannah's face didn't flinch, but her eyes told another story. A flicker of confusion, fear. She didn't understand why I wasn't crying, why I wasn't screaming, why I didn't throw the tray back at her or shove her to the floor like everyone expected. Because people like her, they only know one thing, control. And when someone refuses to break, refuses to bend, refuses to even acknowledge their power, it makes them panic. It makes them dangerous. I sat back down, pulled out a clean granola bar from my bag, unwrapped it, took a bite. Savannah was still frozen in place, juice drying on the floor. A phone still pointed at me from someone's trembling hand. The room, silent. And in that silence, I knew something important. She'd miscalculated. She thought I was prey. But I wasn't quiet because I was weak. I was quiet because I was measuring. And now she was officially on my radar. The next day, the whispers weren't about me. They were about her. She dumped juice on her tray, and the girl just stood there. Savannah's face, did you see it? She looked scared. They said it soft, like they were scared to say it louder. Like even the words felt dangerous. And in Silverwood Prep, danger didn't belong to Savannah Whitmore. It belonged to me now. I didn't smile. Didn't change how I walked. Still silent, still invisible on the surface. But underneath, something was shifting. I felt it in the way eyes followed me longer than before. Not mocking, not pitying, watching, measuring. Savannah felt it too. I could tell. At lunch, her laugh was louder than usual, sharper. She leaned in closer to Haley, whispered more than necessary. She was performing, but I wasn't the one watching her. Everyone else was. They weren't laughing with her anymore. They were waiting for her to prove she still ran this place. Waiting to see if the girl in the corner with the juice-stained shirt would ever break her silence. She hadn't expected this. None of them had. But I had. Because I've been here before. Same game, different faces. And I remember exactly how it ended. It was Detroit. A Tuesday. The gym smelled like bleach and dust and echo. Her name was Erica. She didn't come with followers or strategy. Just one thing. Cruelty, sharpened to a blade. She liked to get close. Say the worst things with a smile, just loud enough to slice, never loud enough to catch a teacher's ear. She waited until the crowd was thick and the eyes were ready. That day, she threw a milk carton at my face. The room burst into laughter, except me. I didn't see her. I saw fire, the kind that doesn't burn your skin. It burns your name, your breath, your future. And just like that, the dam broke. My brain shut down. 3 moves, 1 arm lock, 1 sweep, 1 slam. She hit the floor so hard the sound ricocheted through the gym like a dropped cinder block. Some kids gasped, others backed away. Me? I just stood there. Not because I was proud, not because I was sorry, because I didn't feel anything at all. Not triumph, not regret, just emptiness. And that terrified me. Worse than her insults. Worse than the punishment. Worse than anything she could have done to me. What scared me most was what I'd done to her and to myself. They called my dad. He showed up in his old gym hoodie in quiet disappointment. He didn't yell. He didn't flinch. He just looked at me and said, "You gave them the headline, Imani, not the truth." I never forgot that. So when I stepped into Silverwood, I wasn't just the new girl. I was a locked box. Hands tucked deep in sleeves, feet measured, breath quiet. Because I knew what I could do, and I also knew what it would cost me. And Savannah? She was testing the walls. She thought she was poking a shadow. But she didn't know I was steel, and even steel bends, if you heat it long enough. I felt it again today. That pressure, that ache behind my ribs like something coiled, was waking up. By the last period, something new showed up. A folded note tucked neatly inside my desk. No name, just words, 7 of them. How long are you going to keep pretending you're not dangerous? I read it twice, slowly, not to decode it, but to feel the weight of it settle in my spine, because whoever wrote it understood, maybe better than I wanted to admit. I folded the note, slid it into my pocket, and stared at the blackboard, my hands still. But inside, something was moving. Detroit wasn't just a memory, it was a warning. And if Savannah kept pushing, if this school kept watching, they were all going to learn what Erica learned too late. I don't start fights. But I don't walk away from them either. The note stayed in my pocket all day, not because I didn't want to throw it away, but because I couldn't stop touching it. Fingertips brushing the fold, over and over. Like maybe the paper could explain what I was supposed to do next. I didn't have an answer by the final bell. I just knew one thing. That question, it wasn't going away. Not until I did something. And that scared me. Because doing something, really doing something, had a cost, and I wasn't sure I had enough left to pay it. The house was quiet when I got home. We lived at the edge of town, 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom. Faint smell of liniment and old gym mats clinging to the walls, like the air itself remembered who my father used to be. I dropped my backpack by the door and stood still for a second, just listening. Then I heard it. That low, rhythmic sound, thud, 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 the heavy bag, of course. I followed it to the garage. My father, Jeremiah Carter, bare-chested, wrapped hands, sweat gleaming across the map of old scars and muscle. Every jab landed with the precision of memory. He didn't look up when I walked in. Didn't stop moving. Just said, "You ever gonna tell me what's been going on at that school?" I didn't answer right away. He jabbed twice. Duck, cross. Then turned, slow, deliberate. His eyes didn't look angry. They looked prepared, like he already knew. And maybe he did. I sat on the edge of the bench press, shoulders heavy, like every secret was made of lead. "It's happening again," I said. He didn't ask what it was. Didn't need to. He unwrapped his hands slowly, pulling the cloth taut between each finger like it helped him think. "You fight?" I shook my head. "Not yet." He nodded. "That's the hardest part." Then silence. The kind that sits in the ribs. Not awkward, just waiting. "I keep thinking if I ignore it, it'll go away," I said. "It won't," he said simply. "You already know that. I don't want to hurt anyone again. You didn't hurt Erica." I looked up, startled. He met my eyes, calm as stone. "She hurt you. What you did was react, but I lost control." "No," he said. "You let your body speak louder than your mind. That's not losing control. That's forgetting who's in charge." He walked over and sat beside me. His voice dropped low. Not soft, measured. "You know what the hardest thing about being trained is?" I didn't answer. "It's not the bruises, not the hours. It's the waiting. Knowing you could end something in seconds, but choosing not to. That's control, Imani. Not silence, not fear, choice." I swallowed hard. My throat ached. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I've seen fighters with fists like steel, but hearts like glass. They crumble the first time someone talks about their mama. He glanced sideways at me. "But you?" he said. "You've got steel in both." I felt my eyes sting. Didn't let them fall. He reached into the old mini fridge next to the bench, grabbed 2 water bottles, tossed me one. "Control doesn't mean surrender," he said, "and peace doesn't mean weakness." I looked at the condensation sliding down the bottle, the sound of the bag still echoing behind my eyes. "She's pushing me," I said. He nodded. "They always do. She wants to see what I'll do." He looked at me real quiet. "What will you do?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Because part of me, some hidden, aching part, wanted to hit something, just to make the heat inside my chest make sense. But another part wanted to walk away. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to become her. That's what they never understand. What it costs to hold back. Every insult, every shove, every eye that dares you to explode. It builds, and you carry it. Not in your fists, in your blood. My father saw that. He always did. He leaned back, took a slow sip of water, and said it without blinking. "You don't start the fight, Imani, but you finish it." That sentence didn't sound like permission. It sounded like truth. The kind that leaves marks when it lands. I nodded once. Just once. Then stood. My legs were heavier than they should have been, but my spine? Steel. As I walked back to my room, I passed the mirror in the hallway. For a second, I didn't recognize myself. Because the girl in the reflection didn't look scared. She looked ready. The hallway felt different that morning. Not louder, not quieter, just thinner. Like the air had been stretched too tight and might tear if you breathed too hard. I walked slower than usual, not out of fear, out of certainty. Certainty that something was waiting. And sure enough, when I turned the corner to my locker, it was there. A piece of paper, taped right across the middle of the metal like a badge, centered, intentional. Not a sticky note, printer paper folded in half, no handwriting on the outside. I glanced around before touching it, not because I was scared, because I already knew I was being watched. And I was right. Haley leaned against the lockers down the hall, phone in hand, but not looking at the screen. Sloane stood next to her, arms crossed, trying to look casual. And Savannah? She wasn't there. Not yet. I peeled the paper off carefully, unfolded it. One sentence, written in bold black ink, all caps. After school, behind the gym, or stay a coward forever. No signature, no name, didn't need one. Everyone in that hallway knew who it was from, and who it was for. I stood there a second longer than I should have, letting the words burn. Then I folded the note, neat, precise, slid it into my jacket pocket, turned the lock on my locker like nothing had happened. But everything had, because that wasn't just a threat, it was a declaration, a public challenge, and it didn't matter what I did next. The whole school would be watching. I passed groups of students whispering in waves. They didn't bother pretending anymore. She's not going to show. She will. I heard she used to fight in Chicago. Nah, Savannah's just proving a point. By second period, it was no longer rumor, it was event. I was the headline and the entertainment package all in one. Every class I walked into, the noise died. Teachers tried to pretend nothing was happening, but even they knew. They'd seen this movie before. They just didn't know how it would end this time. Near the end of lunch, I felt the shift again. It was subtle, like the temperature dropping before a storm. I was walking past the vending machines near the main stairwell when I heard it. That hush, the kind that parts the hallway like a knife. And then I saw her, Savannah Whitmore, walking straight toward me. Her steps were slow, calculated. Behind her, like shadows made of lip gloss and spite, Haley and Sloan. Blake wasn't far behind, towering and silent, hands shoved into his Letterman jacket. Trent Maddox trailed a few steps off to the side, that dumb half smile on his face like he was waiting for someone to cry. I didn't stop. Neither did she. We met dead center in the hallway, inches apart. People lined the walls now, phones out, mouths half open, teachers nowhere, just us. And the silence. Savannah smiled. It wasn't kind. It was a smile made of blades. "Hope you got my little note," she said. Her voice was light, breezy, but her eyes, dead serious. I didn't respond. She tilted her head. "You know, there's still time to back out. Save yourself the embarrassment, the limp." Haley snickered behind her. Sloan just stared like I was something she was trying to solve. I looked at Savannah. Really looked. She wasn't as calm as she sounded. Her hands were balled into fists at her sides. Barely. Her smile trembled for half a second before locking back into place. I saw it. So did she. That's why her next words came sharper. "I mean, we all know why you don't talk. You're scared." The crowd leaned in, phones raised. She wanted to humiliate me before the bell even rang. She wanted me to shrink, but I didn't. I stepped forward, just enough. And I said it, clear and clean, "I'll be there." Her smile faltered, just for a breath. Then she blinked, smirked, and turned. "Good," she said over her shoulder. "Can't wait." They walked off, but I didn't move. Not for a long time. Because that moment, it wasn't about the fight, it was about the decision. The line had been drawn, and I had just stepped across it. By the end of the school day, Silverwood wasn't a school anymore. It was an arena, and I was the main event. Word spread faster than fire. By sixth period, it wasn't just a hallway rumor. It was scheduled programming. Everyone knew, after school, behind the gym, the showdown Savannah Whitmore had demanded, and I had accepted. I walked to my last class like I always did, slow, focused, breathing in counts of 4. But something was different. The way people moved when I passed, not mockery anymore, not even fear, just anticipation, the kind that hung thick in the air. You could hear it in the silence. When the final bell rang, the school didn't empty. It migrated. The crowd moved in one current, a tide flowing to the back lot behind the gym. That forgotten patch of concrete where fights happened quietly, where teachers didn't bother checking unless they heard sirens. I waited a minute, maybe 2. Let them get there first. I didn't want to be the first thing they saw. I wanted to be the last thing they forgot. Then I stood, slung my bag over one shoulder, zipped my jacket, walked. Every footstep felt like a countdown. The sky was overcast when I rounded the building, clouds heavy and low, a storm brewing somewhere in the distance. Figures circled the back lot like it was a stage. At least 50 students, maybe more. Phones ready, eyes wider than they should have been, and in the center, Savannah, Haley, Sloan, Blake, Trent, like a royal court preparing for an execution. Savannah stood still, one foot tapping lightly on the ground. She didn't see me right away. But when she did, she smiled. It wasn't the same smile as before. It was tighter, sharper, masked in control but cracking around the edges. I walked through the crowd without flinching. No words, no stares, Just space parting for me like something sacred or cursed was coming through. And then we were face to face, just like in the hallway. Except now there were no teachers, no bells, no rules. Just air and eyes and tension stretched to breaking. She tilted her head. "You're early," she said, voice casual. "I'm ready," I replied, simple, direct, unshakable. Her eyes narrowed. She wasn't expecting confidence. She was expecting tremble. And that's when I saw it, the flicker in her throat, the shift in her stance. She was nervous, but bluffing. "Let's make this quick," Savannah said. "I've got plans after." I didn't answer. Because I wasn't here to trade words. I was here because she asked for a war. And I was done playing diplomat. The crowd pushed closer, phones lifted higher. Blake stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. Tall, built like a linebacker. Arms like tree trunks and half the brain power. Haley and Sloan flanked Savannah, whispering something I couldn't hear. Probably strategies. Probably prayers. Trent Maddox leaned against the side of the gym, still grinning like this was his favorite show of the year. He wouldn't be smiling much longer. I dropped my bag gently by the edge of the circle, rolled my shoulders once. The hoodie I wore fell loose. My stance widened. And then I took one breath, in, out. Everything else disappeared. They thought I was the lamb, silent, small, easy. They didn't see the way my muscles tensed, calibrated to react. Didn't notice the precision in how I moved. Didn't understand what it meant to be taught by a man who once fought for his life in rings and streets and cages and made it out whole. I heard my father's voice in my head. "Don't move first. Let them come to you. Let them expose themselves." Savannah signaled. Trent cracked his neck and stepped forward. And just like that, the arena came alive. The phones, the whispers, the sharp intake of breath across the crowd. But I didn't blink, didn't flinch. Didn't move. Not until I had to. Because I wasn't just standing there, I was measuring wind, pressure, angles. And when the first move came, I would answer. Trent moved first. Of course he did. He was always the reckless one, the loud one, the kind of boy who thought chaos was a weapon. He charged at me with both arms wide, like he was trying to grab a shadow and make it bleed. I didn't run, didn't brace. I waited. 1 second, 2, then I stepped to the right. Pivoted, let his weight do all the work. My hand caught his wrist. The other slipped behind his elbow. Twist, shift, lock. The crowd gasped before he hit the ground. And when he did, it was loud. Not just the sound of impact, the silence that followed. He didn't scream, he just froze. Because I had him. Pinned, not hurting, just stuck. Held down with the kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself. I leaned down. Eyes cold, voice low, so only he could hear. "You're done." I released. He scrambled back, eyes wide, breath ragged. No one laughed. Not even Trent. Because whatever they thought this was, it wasn't that. The crowd shifted. Energy spiked, phones tilted higher. Blake stepped forward next. Big, broad, confident, wearing that smirk like a helmet. He cracked his knuckles, rolled his neck. "You're not touching me like that," he muttered. Not a threat, a promise. Savannah didn't stop him. She nodded, like she was sending in the cleanup crew, like I was something to be swept. I centered my feet, watched his shoulders. He was fast for someone that size, but speed means nothing if you telegraph your move. He led with his left. A shoulder check meant to stun. Most girls would have stumbled. I pivoted, redirected. His momentum met empty air, then I dropped low, hooked behind his knee. Pulled, sweep. He didn't fall pretty. He fell like a tree, hard, final, the kind of fall that echoes down a hallway even when you're not in one. The crowd jolted. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "No way." Blake tried to get up fast, but I was already standing, already calm, already looking past him like he was never the real problem. He sat there, blinking like he'd just stepped into a nightmare that didn't follow the script, because the script always ended with him on top. This one didn't. This one had me, standing, still waiting. And then there was only her, Savannah, the last one, the queen. Except now, she looked smaller. The confidence in her spine, fractured. The smirk she always wore, gone. All that was left was her, standing in the middle of a crowd that had just watched her kingdom crumble. I turned to face her fully. Didn't move, didn't blink, just locked eyes. And that's when I saw it. She was shaking. Not violently, not enough for most to notice. But I saw the tremble in her hands, the tight grip on the hem of her jacket, the weight of what just happened pressing into her chest like gravity. She wasn't just surprised, she was afraid. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't in control. And she knew it. I could have said something, anything. But I didn't need to. Because the silence between us said everything. She wanted a war. But I'd just taken down her front line, and I was still standing. 2 down, 1 left, and she was shaking. Savannah didn't move at first. She just stood there, frozen, 1 foot slightly behind the other, like she was caught mid-step and couldn't figure out which direction to go. Blake was still on the ground behind her. Trent hadn't even tried to stand again. Sloan and Haley hovered at the edges of the crowd now, faces pale, phones down. No one was laughing anymore. No one was smiling. They were waiting. Waiting for their queen to do something, anything. But queens don't shake. And Savannah Whitmore was trembling. She tried to hide it, squared her shoulders, tilted her chin. But I saw the micro movements, the twitch of her jaw, the way her breath came shallow and fast. She looked at me like she wanted to speak, but no words came out, just silence. A silence that used to belong to me. Now it belonged to her, and she hated it. Then, like a dam finally cracking, she snapped. Didn't warn me, didn't scream, didn't even blink, just lunged. Fast, sharp, wild. It wasn't a calculated strike, it was panic wrapped in pride. She went low, like she'd seen me do to Blake, trying to catch me off balance. Like if she could just knock me down, everything would reset. But Savannah didn't understand balance, or leverage, or that when you come at someone from rage, you lose your grip before you even make contact. I stepped aside just enough, not much, half a foot, and caught her wrist mid-swing. She froze, surprised. That hesitation, that's all I needed. I spun with her momentum, let it carry her forward, then redirected it. Click. Her arm locked behind her back. Not painfully, just enough. Enough for her to understand I was in control. Completely. Her body stiffened. She resisted. I held tighter, then leaned in, real close, my voice just above a whisper. You were never strong, Savannah. She stopped breathing. I could feel it. The pause in her chest, the fear wrapped around her spine like ice. I didn't yell, didn't threaten. I let the truth do the damage. You were just loud. She crumbled, not physically, but everything else. Her shoulders sagged. Her legs went weak. I could have dropped her then, let her fall in front of everyone, let her humiliation be total. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about flipping the script. It was about ending it. So I slowly released her arm, stepped back. She staggered 1 step forward, unsteady, then caught herself, turned to face me. Her eyes were glassy, red-rimmed, not from pain, from exposure. Savannah had spent years building a wall of glitter and venom around herself. But all it took was 3 minutes of reality to break it apart. She looked around, desperate for an anchor, but no one stepped forward. Not Blake, not Haley, not even Trent. Everyone she ruled over was gone. Still there in body, but not in loyalty, not in fear. And for someone like Savannah Whitmore, that was worse than any bruise. I saw her lip twitch, like she wanted to say something, to fight for the last scrap of image she had left. But she didn't, because there was nothing left to say, just her, standing alone, in the middle of a circle that used to protect her, used to crown her. Now, it was her prison. I bent down, picked up my bag, slipped it over my shoulder like this was just another Tuesday. Because for me, it was. I didn't come here to prove I was strong. I came here because I refused to be silenced anymore. And now the silence? It belonged to her. I turned to walk away. And that's when it happened. She called out, just 1 word, wait. It came out soft, cracked, like she wasn't sure if she meant it. I paused, looked back over my shoulder. She met my eyes. No mask, no armor, just fear. Not of me, of what came next. Because now, she had to live in the world she'd created, but without the crown, without the power, without the audience. I didn't say anything, didn't offer a hand, didn't twist the knife. I just gave her the same thing she gave me my first day at Silverwood. Silence. And then I walked, straight through the crowd. And for the first time, they didn't look at her. They looked at me, not in fear, not in pity, but in understanding. And behind me, I didn't hear crying, didn't hear rage, just footsteps. Uncertain, lonely, and fading. Savannah Whitmore had finally looked up, and no one looked back. Silverwood didn't go back to normal the next day. It couldn't. You don't watch someone like Savannah Whitmore fall and just pretend nothing happened. Her name used to echo down the hallways. Now it barely made a sound. No one walked beside her that morning. Not Blake, not Haley, not Sloan. She moved alone, like a shadow that hadn't figured out the light was gone. She kept her head low, hair perfectly brushed, nails still manicured, outfit immaculate, like she was still trying to wear her power even if it no longer fit. But you could see it, the hollow behind her eyes, the silence around her. And silence, when you're used to controlling the room, is the cruelest punishment of all. I watched her from my usual seat in the cafeteria, back corner, same spot. Not because I was hiding, just because I liked the distance. It gave me space to see the whole picture. She sat 3 tables across, alone. Trays clattered, conversations bubbled, life moved. But no one moved toward her. No one slid beside her. No one dared to laugh too loud in her direction, or at her. They didn't fear her anymore. They just forgot her. And for Savannah, that might have been worse. Blake passed her table once. He didn't stop, didn't even glance. Just walked with that same perfect athlete posture he always carried. But this time, without the responsibility of being her brother's shield. Sloan floated around Haley's orbit now, still whispering, still watching. But when Savannah caught her eye across the room, Sloan looked away, quickly, like the sight burned. Haley? She didn't even pretend. She laughed loudly with a new group of girls near the vending machine, making a point not to look back. And Savannah? She sat still, picking at her food, swallowing pride with every dry bite. I didn't feel joy watching her fall, not once. Because this wasn't about victory, it was about release. About not carrying the weight she used to drop on every shoulder that dared to stand straighter than hers. And me? I wasn't celebrating. I was breathing. For the first time since I stepped into Silverwood, I could breathe without feeling like someone was pressing their thumb against my lungs. A group of freshmen passed by my table. One of them glanced at me, then nodded, just once. It wasn't fear. It wasn't worship. It was acknowledgement, and that meant everything, because I didn't ask to be followed. I just asked to be left alone. And now I was. Later that day, I passed Savannah in the hallway. No crowd, no entourage, no fire. She stood at her locker, turning the combination slowly. Her fingers shook. Not from cold, from the quiet. That locker used to be a throne. Now it was a confession booth. I walked past her, didn't stop. But I heard her breathing catch. She didn't speak, didn't try, and neither did I. Because the game? It was over. And I never wanted to play it in the first place. In class, the seat beside me stayed empty. She didn't try to reclaim it. She didn't try anything. Because power built on fear is fragile. And once it's broken, once people realize you're not invincible, they don't come back. They scatter. The fear becomes embarrassment. The silence becomes exile. Savannah Whitmore had ruled a kingdom built on intimidation, and now there was no one left to rule. Mr. Halbrook handed back our essays in 4th period. Mine had a note in the margin, sharp, honest, a voice worth hearing. I read it twice because for so long I'd tried to keep my voice buried, tucked beneath silence and survival. But now I was starting to understand that my voice didn't have to be loud to matter. It just had to be mine. By the time the day ended, I passed 3 more people who nodded at me. 2 offered quiet smiles. One even said, "Hey, Imani," and that was enough. I didn't need a crown, didn't need a table in the center of the cafeteria, didn't need to own the room. All I ever wanted was to exist in it, unbothered, unbroken. Savannah lost everything because she thought control was the same as power. That fear was the same as respect. That volume was the same as presence. But me? I didn't lose anything because I never played her game. And now, neither did anyone else. By Friday, the whispers had vanished, not lowered, not hushed, gone. Silverwood's hallways, once thick with speculation and venom, had turned still, not peaceful, just cautious. Like the whole building had learned what it meant to breathe carefully. And in the middle of that calm, me. No one looked at me with pity anymore, or fear, just recognition. Like they finally saw I was real. Not a story, not a warning, not a mystery. Just a girl who'd refused to fold. I could have left it there. Could have let Savannah keep sitting by herself in the cafeteria, dissolving one slow minute at a time. But something about it didn't sit right. Not guilt, not revenge either. Just wait. The kind that hangs behind your ribs when something is unfinished. Like a breath you forgot to release. She had started this, but I needed to finish it. Not with fists, not with force. With something sharper. Lunchtime, same cafeteria, same seat. I watched her before I moved. She was sitting alone again, stabbing at a tray of untouched food, pretending she didn't feel every eye that wasn't on her. For someone like Savannah, invisibility was worse than punishment. It was death by 1,000 ordinary moments. Moments she once controlled. Now, she had to endure them like the rest of us. So I stood up, picked up my tray, and walked. Every fork paused mid-air. Every whisper cut mid-sentence. The air cracked with tension before I even reached her table. When I did, I didn't speak right away. Just looked down at her. She blinked up, startled. Her mask, the one she'd spent years perfecting, was gone. There were no walls, no defenses, just a tired girl trying not to fall apart in front of everyone. Her shoulders were tight, like she expected another blow. But I wasn't here to hurt her. That wasn't what this was. Her voice, when it came, was smaller than I expected. You want something? It wasn't sarcasm. It was surrender, quiet, honest, almost human. I placed my tray on the table across from hers, sat down. She stared like I'd just flipped the laws of gravity. I let the silence stretch, just long enough to remind her I wasn't here for spectacle. Then I said it, simple, final. It's over. She flinched. I leaned in. I'm not your enemy, but I won't be your victim again. She blinked, once, slowly, but she didn't speak, didn't nod, didn't protest, because there was nothing left to say. She knew it, and so did I. Around us, the cafeteria held its breath. No one interrupted, no one laughed. Even the clatter of trays sounded softer. They knew this wasn't a performance. It was a reckoning, and sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. I stood up, picked up my tray again, and walked away. I didn't glance back, didn't need to, because the shift had already happened. Not just in her, not just in me, but in all of them. They saw it now. Power isn't volume, it's presence. Control isn't fear, it's restraint. And justice? Justice doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like letting go. As I left the cafeteria, someone muttered, "Did you see that?" Another replied, "Yeah, I think it's finally done. But me, I didn't think it was done. I thought it had just started." Because what Savannah did to me, what people like her do every day in places like this, it never ends in one afternoon. It echoes through memory, through silence, through people watching, deciding who to become. But today, I had sent another kind of echo, a louder one. And it didn't come from my fists. It came from the choice not to use them. She didn't respond, not with words, not with pride, just silence. And that silence felt heavier than any scream she could have thrown back at me. Because when someone like Savannah has nothing left to say, it means she finally heard you. The Monday after everything went quiet. No gasps, no wide-eyed stares, no phones halfway raised, waiting for something explosive to happen between me and Savannah, because there was nothing left to explode. The air in Silverwood was different, lighter maybe, but also heavier in its awareness. People weren't afraid of me. Not exactly, but they looked at me differently now. Like they understood I wasn't someone they could bend or categorize. Not a ghost, not a threat. Just someone who had survived every test they'd thrown at her and didn't ask for applause after. The first real sign came before homeroom. I walked into the hallway like I always did, hoodie on, bag slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, but music off, just listening. This time, though, there were no whispers behind my back, just quiet acknowledgement. A guy from my math class, Tyler, I think, nodded as he passed me. Not dramatic, not performative, just a small gesture. The kind you give to someone who's earned something you can't fake. And it kept happening. A girl I didn't know opened the library door and held it longer when she saw me coming. A group of juniors made space at the vending machine without being asked. Not out of fear, out of respect. That word used to feel so far from me. Untouchable. Something only loud people like Savannah could demand. But here it was, showing up in eye contact, in silence, in the way no one touched my locker again. I spotted Savannah once. Third period, outside the main office. She was sitting alone on the bench, looking down at her phone, pretending to scroll. But her thumb wasn't moving. She looked up, saw me. I didn't stop walking. But I didn't look away either. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. She blinked. And then, she dropped her gaze. That told me everything I needed to know. The crown was gone. She wasn't even trying to pick it back up. And me, I wasn't interested in taking it. That afternoon in the cafeteria, I didn't sit at the corner table. Not because I wanted a new spot, but because someone was already sitting there when I got in. 2 underclassmen, nervous and whispering, looked up like they expected me to ask them to move. I didn't. I gave them a nod, walked to the next table over, ate in peace. Didn't need to isolate anymore. I was done hiding. The buzz in the room wasn't about Savannah now, and for once, it wasn't about me either. It was about the school, the shift, the fact that things were starting to change, even if no one had the language for it yet. Haley now sat at the edge of a new group, no longer the center. Sloane kept looking over her shoulder, like she expected someone to whisper something about her this time. Blake had gone quiet, still towering, still golden boy perfect, but muted. Even Trent had started hanging near the gym more, talking to kids who didn't care about hallway politics. It was like Savannah's fall had taken the script with it. And now, everyone was improvising. I didn't say much that day, didn't need to. I was learning something new. When you walk with quiet strength, people notice. When you move like you're done asking for permission to exist, they make room. Not because you force them, but because they finally understand they should have in the first place. I passed Ms. Green, the counselor, near the east wing after last bell. She gave me a small smile and a raised eyebrow. "You okay?" she asked gently. I nodded. "Yeah." She studied me a second longer. "You don't have to carry the whole school on your back, you know?" I smiled. "I'm not," I said. "I just finally put mine down." Later that night, as I sat on the porch steps outside my house, sipping tea with my dad, he didn't ask questions, didn't need the details. He just said, "You walked through fire, Imani." And I said, "Yeah, but I didn't burn." He smiled, that kind of proud smile, only back at school the next morning, something small happened, something that shouldn't have mattered, but did. A student passed me in the stairwell, didn't stop, didn't speak, just gave me a nod. And I nodded back. That was it. No drama, no performance. Just a new understanding settling into the bones of Silverwood Prep. They used to whisper when I passed. Now they nodded. That was enough. The sun hit Silverwood's bricks like it was trying to burn something clean. It was one of those mornings. Quiet, golden, too still for anything bad to happen. The kind of peace that feels suspicious when you've lived too long without it. I sat on the edge of the courtyard wall, hoodie up, hands buried in the sleeves, not hiding, just present. And I realized this was the first time I'd sat still at school without scanning for eyes, without wondering who was watching, without waiting for the next hit. No cameras, no whispers, no threats shoved through locker vents. Just me, existing, finally. I never wanted power. Not the kind Savannah had. Not the cafeteria eyes or the hallway silence when you walked past. I never wanted a crown, just quiet. But power has a way of finding the people who never asked for it. Because people listen differently after you stop letting them walk over you. They look longer, not in judgment, in awe. Someone walked past and dropped a folded note in my lap. For a second, instinct kicked in. Tension in my spine, muscles ready. But when I unfolded it, it wasn't a threat. It wasn't anonymous. It was signed, "Thank you, no name," but the handwriting was shaky, careful, like they were still afraid to say it out loud. Still, I smiled, just a little, because that note, it meant the silence had spoken, and someone heard it. Savannah didn't come to school that day, maybe not the next either. I didn't ask, didn't chase the story, because that chapter was over. And when something breaks like that, sometimes it doesn't come back. Or if it does, it returns as something else entirely. Third period, I got called to the counselor's office. Ms. Green waited with a man I didn't recognize. Balding, suit jacket, kind smile. Principal's office sent him, apparently. Student culture liaison. Whatever that meant. They asked about the incident behind the gym. Asked if I wanted to press charges. I looked at them both. Calm, clear. No, I said, I don't need to. I ended it. Ms. Green didn't press. Just nodded like she understood. When I stepped back into the hallway, the bell had already rung. Students brushed past me. No shoves, no slurs, no smirks. Someone said, "Hey, Imani, another good luck on the chem quiz." I blinked, almost smiled again, then kept walking, because this was what I'd fought for. Not dominance, not popularity, just space. To breathe, to think, to belong. That afternoon, I stayed after school. Everyone had left. Halls were half dark, janitors humming down the west wing. I walked past the trophy case, past the cheerleading portraits, past the homecoming banners still fluttering slightly under the vent breeze, then out the doors, onto the steps, into the sun. And I just stood there, felt the warmth hit my face, closed my eyes, let the stillness settle, because this was more than survival. This was reclamation. I'd taken my space back, taken my voice back, taken me back. And it didn't require yelling, didn't require bruises, just a refusal to be broken again. I pulled out my phone, typed something into my notes, just for me. True power doesn't scream, it doesn't shove, it doesn't threaten. It stands, and it stays. My father was waiting in the car. As I climbed in, he didn't say anything at first, just reached across and squeezed my shoulder. Proud, quiet, steady. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, but I didn't look at him yet. I stared out the window, watched Silverwood grow smaller behind me, and whispered something even I wasn't ready to say out loud until that moment. "I'm stronger now." He started the engine. We drove. No music, just wind and light and the sound of new beginnings unrolling in front of us. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying anything extra. No fear, no shame, no weight that didn't belong to me. They tried to break me, tried to silence me, tried to corner me, define me, reduce me into something small and controllable. But what they didn't know was that I'd already fought worse battles in places no one saw. I'd already walked through fire in silence, already held myself together when the world tried to crack me open. They thought I came to Silverwood with nothing. They were wrong. I came with discipline, with training, with pain I'd already survived and turned into armor. I didn't come for war, but I was ready for one. I never wanted a throne, never wanted to sit above anyone. I just wanted to stop being stepped on. And now I walk, unbothered, unbroken, unshaken. Because what they tried to bury was never weakness. It was a seed. And now, it's grown. The warrior's not hiding anymore. The story has changed. So has the school. And I know one thing for sure. This is just the beginning. Because what they woke up will never sleep again. Sometimes, the quietest person in the room is carrying the heaviest weight. Imani Carter's story isn't just about a girl who stood up to bullies. It's about every person who's ever been underestimated, silenced, or pushed to the edges just for existing differently. It's about surviving in a system that pretends to be fair while weaponizing silence, reputation, and fear. What this story reminded me, what it should remind all of us, is that power doesn't always come in the form of violence or volume. Sometimes, it's the restraint not to retaliate, the courage to stay standing when everything around you says to sit down, the grace to walk away when it's easier to destroy. We live in a world that still judges by skin tone, still assigns labels without knowing the story. But stories like this one, they shake the room, because they force us to confront what kind of people we are in someone else's silence. Let this be a reminder. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to fight to be powerful. You don't need a crown to take up space. You just need to know who you are and refuse to let anyone shrink it. This story is a work of fiction created for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to target or defame any individual group or institution. Its purpose is to shed light on the lived experiences of those affected by bullying, racial bias, and social inequality, so that we can all grow in empathy, awareness, and strength. Have you ever faced a moment where silence spoke louder than words? What would you have done in Imani's shoes? Let's talk, let's share, let's be better for ourselves and for each other. And if this story moved you, like it, share it, and subscribe for more powerful, real narratives that shine a light on the injustices we don't always see, but can always feel. Thank you for watching this video. Wishing you a peaceful day and see you in the next one.